Welcome in. It's Big Ten Today, presented by Gatorade on this Monday. Mountains have been moved. Oceans have been drained. The first time in 2 years, Robbie Hummel here for an entire show. This is
I finally got invited to be here. It's good to be here, though. The morning show has always been something that I enjoy watching, and I'm glad to be on it.
We are delighted to have you as a part of it, and I have one pledge to you.
What's that?
Something that we have felt really strongly about from the get-go. No one stands in front of you while you're trying to do your job on this show.
Hey, you know what? That feels really, really good.
Yeah,
to hear
that's something we've always believed in.
I
It's just a novel approach,
pledge.
but yeah, that's how we approach things. Let's get to our big story, and it is the weekend that was in the Big Ten. Indiana completed the season sweep of Purdue. Maryland finished perfect at home in conference play. Both Iowa and Michigan won after forcing overtime on threes in the waning seconds. Iowa's win was particularly crazy, and Rutgers rallied from 19 down in the second half to top Penn State on the road. We're going to touch on all these games. Let's start, though, with Indiana and Purdue, Robbie. Indiana completes the season sweep. It's, again, the first time they've done that in a decade. Jalen Hood-Schifino was just tremendous in this game. I feel like we kind of have to start there.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's NBA. That's what that type of performance is. That's a guy that's going to be playing professional basketball very soon. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. He'll have a decision to make. I think as you see mock drafts that are coming out now, he's starting to get mentioned, and he is going to have a very legitimate decision to make here, whether it's come back to Indiana for his sophomore season or go back or go to the pros. You know, that's going to be a legitimate thing for him. But Purdue was determined to take away Trace Jackson-Davis, and they'd play their drop covers to protect Zach Edey. They do it to take away Trace Jackson-Davis inside, and I just thought Jalen Hood-Schifino made every read the right read, whether it was his mid-range jumper, passes to the weak side, just a clinic from him in pick and roll, and he was phenomenal. I think it's a performance that could end up winning him Freshman of the Year in this league.
He was just incredible, and as you say, most of the damage, almost all of it. I mean, it won three. So almost all of it was in the mid-range and just picking his spots and making the right decision every time. You mentioned TJD. I mean, scoreless in the first half, so Purdue did its job there. Obviously, in the second half, he was really good. From Purdue's point of view, it feels like the game at some points has gotten too physical for the guards. It's not to say these guys aren't going to be great players, because I think we both agree they're going to be really good, but it's a guards game, as we've talked about so much in college basketball, and it just feels like, for whatever reason here over the last few weeks, those guys have struggled.
Well, I think the scouting report is out a little bit on Purdue's guards. You have two freshmen that need time in the weight room. You know, you look at Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, they're not the most physically imposing freshmen that you're going to see in college basketball this season. The freshman wall is a real thing. I think that they could be seeing a little bit of that. And you just look at the way that teams are pressuring Fletcher Lawyer. It was mostly Miller Kopp in that game. He was really into Fletcher. He was physical with him. And I think that's what you're going to see going forward. But there's two things that stand out from this Purdue performance, and this is going to be huge going forward for the rest of the season. It's, does Purdue take care of the ball? And for a stretch, they were really poor with that. They only had 10 turnovers, but it seemed like it all came in that stretch where Indiana really made that run. And do they make threes? Because Edey's going to be Edey. He has been phenomenal. 28 and 16, 8 offensive rebounds. That's just really what he has been all year long, which is incredible. He's had a Player of the Year type season, whether that's in the Big Ten or nationally. But the question for them going forward is, do they turn it over, and do they make open threes on the backside? And they did both of those things poorly.
6 of 23 combined for Smith and Lawyer in this game. And yeah, as we've looked at kind of what's the common thread in these Purdue losses, it is that they haven't hit a lot of threes. And I think the weird thing of it is you look at each one of these players.
They look like they're built to shoot.
Yeah, they do. Right. We've seen each one of them, not only they look the part, but we have seen them fill that role at various times this year. And yet, for whatever reason, it seems like when they're off as a group, they are really off. Big week coming up for Indiana. They're still in a good spot for a double bye. We'll get to the standings in a bit. But Iowa and Michigan both at home. So we'll talk a little bit more about the week ahead for them. Two of the teams that the Hoosiers are battling for that double bye with, Northwestern and Maryland, played in College Park. Maryland took the narrow lead on a three-pointer at the first half buzzer, Jameer Smith hitting that, and then they just pummeled the Wildcats in the second half. Maryland, not a team that typically shoots the three all that well. In fact, they were 13th in the Big Ten.
Not the
coming
case.
in yesterday.
Not the case
you
yesterday.
would not have known it from yesterday. I mean, they
Yeah.
were just on, and they continue to be absolutely dominant at home, literally unbeatable. in
It's just
conference play.
amazing some of
Yeah.
the road home splits.
Yes.
You look at Indiana, you look at Maryland, you look
Iowa.
at Iowa,
Yes.
who's definitely like the main culprit in that conversation. But that's been the story. And at home, they have just been fantastic. I thought it was a massive performance for Jameer Young, a statement game, because I think those 4 spots on the first team are tied up. Edey, Jackson Davis, Chris Murray, Jalen Pickett. So I think it's a battle for the 5th,
Right.
and you go head-to-head with Boo Buie, who's had a phenomenal year at Northwestern. Everything that they've done with their program and the jump that they've made from last season. But I think it's going to come down these last couple games. How do those teams finish and who plays better? And I'd say round 1 certainly goes to Jameer Young. The three-point shooting, unbelievable, because we've seen them go on the road and just be unable to make anything. But that's a great building. And I think that some people nationally and even in this league have forgot because of the struggles. The Xfinity Center is an awesome place to play when it's going. And it certainly has been doing that here this season. But the balance, you look at all 5 starters from Maryland in double figures, the defensive performance that they put on Boo Buie. Just a great win. And what a first year for Kevin Willard. I mean, to come out and win this many games and be a lock to make the NCAA tournament in year 1, just a tremendous job all around.
First Maryland head coach ever to win 20 games in his first season at the helm of the Terps. And as you say, I mean, offensively, they were just a machine. Northwestern has kind of hung its hat on its defense this year. You get 1.4 points per possession for the game.
The thing is, though, about Northwestern's defense, and I love the fact that they are all in on trapping the post. I think it gives them an identity.
They give up a lot
but
of
it
threes.
also gives up
Yes.
a lot of threes on the backside. And that's something you've got to be willing to live with. You've got to be good rotating out. And when it rains, it pours, especially in that building. You can see just the confidence growing with every made shot. I thought for Northwestern, 3 things in this game really stood out. Did they make threes? No, they did not. 5 of 19 from 3. How many turnovers did they force? Only 7. And that's been something that they've done a pretty good job of doing all year to spark their offense. They force turnovers, find some easy baskets. Their offense is so predicated on Audige and Bowie doing their thing. And when that dries up, we saw it at Illinois, we saw it in this Maryland game, their offense can go through some pretty serious lulls. And then on top of that, do you get to the foul line, they only take 7 free throws. So those 3 things, or 4 things really, none of those things go their way. It's going to be really hard to beat a really tough team in Maryland at home.
Very difficult schedule stretch for them. They went to Illinois and Maryland this week. They come home from Penn State. You want to talk about a team that can hit threes.
Yeah, no kidding, no
That's
kidding.
a team that can hit threes and will be desperate. They finish up at Rutgers. But Maryland, they finish at Ohio State and Penn State. We'll see if they can win some road games. They're 1-7.
Right.
To your point, on the road in the Big Ten. Finally, Iowa, you were there. This was just a remarkable game. I mean,
Unbelievable.
some of the numbers are just staggering. You scored 23 points in the last minute 30 of a game. I don't
think I've ever seen that in a legitimate college basketball or pro setting. You maybe see it in a high school game, maybe, but it was unbelievable.
Yes.
And then you get the antics that were also going on with the stare down.
Oh, yeah.
and all
Were there
that.
antics? I must have missed that.
Yeah. I've never seen that happen. It was funny to kind of see Fran McCaffrey take a step towards Kelly Pfeiffer, and then Kelly Pfeiffer takes a step towards Fran McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Fran had already been thrown out earlier in the week. He was ejected in a game at Northwestern. So I don't know. I've never seen it. And the thing is, you look at the way that Michigan State played, they were 11 of 13 from 3 in regulation. I mean, all 5 of their starters played really well. It's unbelievable.
Let's go through these numbers. They shot 59% from the field for the game.
Yep.
73% from 3. They made 31 free throws on 86% foul.
Well, they only missed 1 foul shot at the end. Now they turned it over twice, I believe. But still, they're just trading 2s for 3s. And somehow, you score these points. I have never seen it. How about Peyton Sanford had 2 shots to win it in East Lansing and then gets it done at
missed
home?
them both, right.
What a weekend for Iowa athletics. This might be the greatest regular season weekend for Iowa ever, because you mentioned
the baseball team beat number 1. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Caitlin Clark's shot. Sanford hits the shot to force overtime. How about Tony Perkins, though, in OT? I mean, back-to-back offensive rebound putbacks. He's the smallest guy on the floor. It was just a surreal atmosphere. A lot of fans had left the building and then were like streaming back in to watch overtime. I did the game with Kevin Brown. We were messing around kind of with the stare down, and we were in blowout mode, where you're just kind of talking about whatever and moving it forward. And then all of a sudden, these guys get hot. They're making threes, and it has to be an incredibly deflating feeling. And I would have loved to have seen what it was like for Michigan State on that flight home, because you've got to pick yourself up off the mat. Everybody's still jostling for these double byes and for NCAA tournament seeding. You've got to find a way to get back on here. And you look at their schedule going forward. They do have Ohio State coming in, and I promise you right now, Ohio State is a team that not one coach in the Big Ten wants to see. They're too talented. They have too many good players. But we're kind of at this point
where there aren't many you do want to see.
No, that's very true.
Right?
I mean, there's probably one, I guess. And even with them, with Minnesota, you're afraid that if you lose, it's a really bad loss due to their net rankings. So, but I think that every coach that sees Ohio State is like, man, Bryce Sensabaugh, he's pretty good. Justice Suing, he has been pretty good. Yeah. You look at Bruce Thornton, really good players. So no one wants to see Ohio State right now.
It does. It's interesting to think about Michigan State and just kind of everything they've been through. The guards were so good in that game.
Hogard lives at the line. Walker, unbelievable again.
Akins was really good.
Akins great. Hauser shot it well.
So you just...
Malik Hall. I mean, it's like everybody played well.
Right. I mean, is there just kind of a way? I know it's impossible to frame it this way when you have a collapse like that, but you did answer some questions that you have about yourself. I don't, again, they've just been through so much.
No doubt.
It's just so hard.
And I think Tom Izzo, before the game, he talked about how I really don't know what we're going to have today. He goes, we could come out and play great, wouldn't be surprised. We could come out and really struggle, that wouldn't surprise me either. The week and a half that they've had since the shooting at Michigan State. And with them, and I thought with Tom Izzo, all of that gets put certainly on the university, but they are the faces of it, in the sense that they're the ones that are playing games on national television. Tom Izzo's the one that's given the speech, and I thought he did a phenomenal job.
Incredible.
But I can only imagine how wiped they all are because of what they have been through in the last week.
No doubt. Well said. Wild game. Most combined points in a Big Ten game since 1990.
Iowa had them right where they wanted them, down 11 with 1:30 to go.
What a moment for Hunter Dickinson and Michigan yesterday. The game-tying three-pointer against Wisconsin. His time expired, sent the game into overtime. Game the Wolverines went on to win by 8. The victory a major boost to their NCAA tourney hopes. That OT thriller gets us to our big stat, brought to you by Gatorade. The 10th overtime game in conference play in the Big Ten this year. That's 4 more than any other power conference. Wisconsin's played in 4 of them, going 2-2. Badgers have 6 OT games overall. That is the most of any team in the nation. Dickinson was the hero to get it to OT, but I would argue the story of this game was the young backcourt. Buffkin and McDaniel were just fantastic.
And I think Kobe Buffkin is really coming into his own, whether it's living at the rim, the mid-range. He's starting to make more shots from the perimeter. And I would say also Doug McDaniel, just how comfortable he is. This is a kid that you look at the start of the year, when he committed to Michigan, he's thinking, all right, we got Frankie Collins, we're going to have Jalen Llewellyn. He probably is not even supposed to be playing, but due to necessity, whether it's injury or transfer, he's been thrust in there, and he's had a really mature feel. He's been coachable. He's certainly had some struggles, but taking care of the basketball, starting to really shoot it well from the three-point line in Big Ten play. But just the feel that they've had, not turning the basketball over, and Buffkin has played like he's starting to look like a guy that's going to play in the National Basketball Association. He has played like a pro. The fouling, not fouling thing has been discussed, whether it's with Michigan State, Wisconsin. I thought it looked like Kamari McGee was trying to foul.
And that's what Greg Gard said afterward.
Yeah.
He did say...
Didn't do a good job of it.
No.
You got to be more demonstrative about doing it.
Right.
And with the 2 seconds, that's a really scary time.
That's risky, right?
It's catching, turning, and shooting. Now, Jordan Davis, when that ball gets thrown up in the air, and whether your coach, he probably was saying, all right, they told us not to foul, I'm not going to foul. But when you got a ball that's thrown up in the air, you could go make a play on it, just bump into Dickinson and foul him, and there's no chance he's catching it. Because you think about it, Hunter had to go up and jump and catch it, corral it, turn and shoot. But it doesn't work out that way. Dickinson makes just an incredible shot. And he's had an interesting year, certainly his beef with Wisconsin on display. And if you're going to talk the trash, this is the type of performance that you have to give to back it up. And he had a double-double. I think it was 23 and 10. But it seems like he has beef with everybody in the league at this point. But he did back it up on this day, and their guard play was phenomenal.
Yeah, it really was. It's a really damaging loss for Wisconsin, and even more damaging when you saw Chucky Hepburn hobble off. Greg Gard didn't have an update after the game on Hepburn's status, and to their credit, other than you mentioned Kamari McGee trying to give a foul and not being able to give it, I actually thought he played really well.
No, he did. He gets the offensive glass. He plays hard. Klesmit had a really nice performance.
2 huge
massive
blocks.
Defensive plays, made threes. Essegian's a player, man. And when they lost Hepburn, they really played through Connor Essegian, whether it's the screen, rescreen action, the pin down stuff they're running for him. Didn't shoot it well from 3, but he's more than a shooter. And the beauty of this is if you can shoot, you can drive. And you don't have to be the most athletic guy, but the way that people close out to you, the respect they give him on his jumper, it allows him to get to his pull-up, get to the rim. He's a really good cutter. He's just a good player, and he's going to be a good player in this league for multiple seasons here. But without Hepburn, he's the guy that makes this go so much of it. Late game situation, the ball is going to be in his hands. Certainly Tyler Wallace had a challenging season with his injury to his ankle. Stephen Crowell's a player, but they do not have the depth to absorb an injury to Chucky Hepburn. It could be a massive development in Madison.
We'll obviously look for updates here coming up during the week. Wisconsin very much on the bubble, as is Michigan as they head into this final week, as is Penn State. And the Nittany Lions had Rutgers dead to rights. I mean, they had them down 19. You're playing on your home court. You've got everything going for you against a team that is just struggling mightily to score the ball and let it all slip away. Give a ton of credit to Rutgers. They figured some stuff out offensively. Obviously, you had a great emergence from Derek Simpson, who was tremendous down the stretch, but completely locked Penn State down on the defensive end in that second half as well. And for Rutgers, it kind of felt like, Robbie, it was headed in a bad direction, not just in this game, but kind of overall.
Well, since the Mag injury.
Absolutely.
It just has not been the same. And I think when you have injuries like that, and sadly I have experience of playing on teams that have season-ending knee injuries.
Gee, who went down? I'm trying to remember.
But I just remember seeing the guys, and it took my teammates a couple games to kind of become unshell-shocked because you care about that person. And you've gone to battle with this guy, and all of a sudden you lose a piece like that. And to me, the really interesting thing has been Mawot Mag averages 7 points a game, but clearly his value is much greater to this team than those points. He's a terrific defensive player. He's a glue guy. He gets on the offensive boards. He's posted more this year. He's made some big shots at the game winner. It was at Rutgers. I forget who it was against, but hit a big corner 3.
He did have one huge game.
He's been a really solid contributor for this group, and they've just looked like a totally different unit offensively without him. I think Derek Simpson is going to be the answer. I think just in the sense of he can get by people, he can get to the rim. You're going to have to live with probably some mistakes, maybe some wild shots at times. But this is a team that scored 45 points in games, since they've lost Mawot Mag. The first half, they have 21 here. And they go for 38 in the second half. I mean, it was a totally different team. But this is a group that has a ton of championship pedigree, in the sense that maybe not championship, but winning pedigree. Going to the NCAA tournament, Caleb McConnell, Cliff Amore, these guys have been through it all. And I think that because of that, you look at the way they respond, and they had to have this game, and they found a way to get it.
Penn State had to have it too. This is a really damaging game for them. So now they head on the road. We were already talking about that game against Northwestern. And then they got Maryland at home. They really got to win both of these.
They probably do.
Or we always forget about Chicago. You do damage in Chicago in the Big Ten tourney, right? I mean, but you don't want to be in a position where you have to win the tournament.
Totally. And the good thing is that you have opportunity. The bad thing is that both these teams are really good. Now, Maryland has been a different group on the road, but I agree with you. I think that for them to feel good on Selection Sunday, you need to win both these.
They're 7-12 against quads 1 and 2. General rule of thumb is you want to be close to 500 against quads 1 and 2. So even if they were to win them both, you might still need to try to figure out a way to win 1 or 2 in Chicago. Really damaging game for Penn State. Here's where things stand after that wild weekend. Purdue has clinched at least a share of the title, and then a 4-way tie for second. Indiana's the odd man out right now due to the tiebreakers, but as we've seen, that can change in a heartbeat. Iowa and Illinois still with a chance to get to 12 wins. Wisconsin, Nebraska, Penn State battling for the last single bye the Badgers have the upper hand as of now.
Martin looking. Here's Clark. She fires and goes! She hit it! Wow!
Wow, indeed. Caitlin Clark with a shot for the ages. The three-pointer to give Iowa a remarkable 86-85 win over number 2 Indiana, capping off a 34-point, 9-rebound, 9-assist performance and handing the Hoosiers their first loss since December, just their second of the year. Indiana still the number 1 seed for the Big Ten women's tourney presented by TIAA. It tips off Wednesday in Minneapolis here on the Big Ten Network. Remember, 12 of the 13 games on our airwaves. Iowa, Maryland, Ohio State joining the Hoosiers as the top 4 seeds. And of course, the last time a team representing the Big Ten won the national title, Steph White was on the all-tournament team for that Purdue team in 1999. She joins us for our big interview. Steph, it is not unreasonable to think that this could be the year that the Big Ten ends that drought. You're talking about so many good teams, including 3 in the top 10. We'll get to that in a bit, but first I just have to ask you, incredible game yesterday. It was everything you could ever ask for, including maybe the biggest star in the sport hitting the last shot. What are your biggest takeaways from watching that?
Oh, my goodness. I have been so excited about Big Ten basketball all season long. Sold out crowds, high level basketball, big time players making big time plays. And everyone in the gym knew that Caitlin Clark was going to get the basketball. The execution, time and score, great coaching, and great players make big plays. And that was one of the biggest by Caitlin Clark by far. It was just an exciting, exciting moment.
Her third game this year of 30 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. There is no one else in the country who has even one on the women's side. Foster Lawyer's got one on the men's side. He's the only one in the men's game who's got it. So it's just really been a remarkable season for her and a remarkable season for Indiana as well. I mean, as we mentioned, they hadn't lost a game since December. And I think as we turn the page and start looking towards the women's tourney, that to me is what has me so fired up, Steph, is there are so many good teams. Give us a sense of kind of what you're anticipating. You're going to be there Saturday working for us at Big Ten Network and then Sunday calling the championship game. Give us a sense of what excites you the most about this tournament.
What excites me the most is just the quality of the depth in the Big Ten, the high-level basketball being played night in and night out. And you think about teams like Iowa, Indiana, Ohio State, even though they struggled a little bit with injury, they're still an outstanding ball club. Maryland, what Brenda Freese has been able to do. Michigan, they've struggled down the stretch with some injuries as well. But you don't know night in and night out who's gonna win a basketball game. There's just such quality depth. There's high level execution. There's great coaching. I mean, it's just the Big Ten is the best conference in women's basketball right now. And you mentioned it and alluded to it. I think this is the year that the Big Ten gets a team, if not multiple teams, in the Final Four.
Man, I hope so, because it would be a lot of fun. And this year has been so good, Steph. Again, I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's just been so good. It needs to end that way. And you've got 3 clear-cut top 10 teams, 5 top 20 teams. It does feel like things are aligning well for the conference. Let's turn up the page and look at the women's tourney. Let's start with the Wednesday games, Penn State and Minnesota. What should we be anticipating in this one?
I think a couple of things that really intrigue me is one, can Minnesota's youth handle the moment? They've not been in this situation in a conference tournament. Penn State has. McKenna Marisa, Leilani Kapanis, even though she's young, they've been there. They've experienced that. So can the young core from Minnesota handle this moment? And it's tough to beat a team 3 times. Minnesota's won those 2 matchups in the regular season. The second thing is ball security. Penn State, second in the league in steals, forced Minnesota into 26 and 27 turnovers in their 2 games this season. But they couldn't capitalize enough off of those turnovers. So ball security, who wins the turnover battle? That's big for me again in this matchup.
Penn State team that's lost 6 in a row. Minnesota playing a little bit better here down the stretch, winners of 2 of their last 4. What about the other game on Wednesday, Rutgers and Northwestern?
These are two teams that really struggle to score the basketball. So to me, it's who can get easy buckets. They had one matchup this season. Rutgers outscored Northwestern 54-23. When you think about points off of turnovers, free throws, second chance points, all the ones that are the easy ones that allow you to get some confidence, see the ball go through the net. So to me, which team can take advantage of those easy buckets and get themselves going offensively?
The only win for Rutgers in their last 6 came against Northwestern, so we'll see whether or not they can replicate that. Big picture on this tournament, is there one matchup that you would most want to see?
Man, I still want to see more Indiana, Iowa. These are two terrific basketball teams, well coached, outstanding individual team efforts in both matchups, two of the highest scoring teams in the country. I can't think of a more exciting matchup than what these two have been all season long, and I want to see it for a third time.
Yeah, it would be hard to look at that game yesterday and say, nah, I'm good with that. I don't,
Right.
I don't need another one of those. I would also say, though, like if the seeds hold and you get Iowa, Maryland again, where you had the home team winning convincingly each time, and it feels like there's a budding rivalry there as well, that would be a pretty nice appetizer for whatever the championship game becomes. Hey, we're going to announce the all Big Ten teams here tomorrow, Steph, on Big Ten today. What would your first team look like if you were choosing it?
Man, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to take a first team and to think about 10 players on a first team. I mean, obviously, Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark's my player of the year. And I think in any other universe where Caitlin Clark's not on the floor, Mackenzie Holmes is a player of the year candidate, certainly a first team. Diamond Miller has had a terrific year. Taylor Mikesell, with what she's really had to endure with no J.C. Sheldon on the floor, has carried Ohio State. And I think Emily Kaiser for Michigan. Emily Kaiser is one of the greatest stories in basketball. And I am so incredibly happy to watch her progress. I think she's an all Big Ten team. Monica Sanano, obviously dominant inside. Makira Cook and what she's led in this Illinois Revolution has been outstanding. Now, Grace Berger was injured early in the year, but she's certainly a first-team all-performer for me. Leah Brown hasn't played down the stretch, but has had a terrific year. And Jazz Shelley, I think Jazz Shelley's a player who's really kept a Nebraska squad, in the hunt off and on throughout the season.
Tough to argue with any of those choices. Again, we will reveal them coming up here on Big Ten Today tomorrow. Steph, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time, and enjoy Championship Week. Big Ten Wrestling Championship Saturday and Sunday in Ann Arbor. Extensive coverage on the Big Ten Network as well as on the Big Ten Plus app. We've got live coverage of all 4 sessions. For more on the weekend ahead, let's send it over to our Wrestling and Beyond crew, Rick Pizzo and Shane Sparks.
Dave, thank you very much. Shane is remarkably excited, not just because it's championship weekend, but that means the quad box.
It does
comes
mean
back.
the quad box. Exactly. I hear Dave talk about that schedule. Gives me goosebumps. Put on the headgear. Let's get to our offense, Rick.
Listen, we love the regular season, but there is a finality, a drama to the championships that we don't see in regular season duels.
Yeah, this is the cherry on top of a great season, but this weight class, when you look at the Big Ten, you got the top 3 teams in the country from the Big Ten, 6 other teams top 21, 43 guys ranked in the top 10. Simply put, when you're in the Big Ten, you volunteer to play in the rough sandbox regardless of the sport.
But you never know in the team competition. Last year it was Michigan. Shocking Penn State, shocking Iowa. Once again, Penn State, Iowa, the top 2 teams. But it's time for us now to reveal in each individual weight class. The seeding is ready to be announced for this weekend's Big Ten championships. And we start at 125, and there is absolutely no surprise. Spencer Lee, the runaway favorite. But a couple of interesting battles could be behind Lee for second and third place.
Yeah, for sure. Liam Cronin's had a phenomenal year. Here's the real catalyst for Nebraska. Matt Ramos, he's only got 1 Big Ten dual meet loss. That was to Spencer Lee. But remember, in that match, he put the Hawkeye in his back. He was up 8-1. You look at this weight class, 7 of the top 10 guys in the country from the Big Ten. Barnett, 2-time All-American. McKee, 2-time All-American. DiAugustino, a 10 seed last year. He finished 4th. This weight class is loaded. Jack Medley, a 10 seed. Are you kidding me?
And I know Liam Cronin's really good. He's the 2 seed. But to put into perspective how good Spencer Lee has been this year, he pinned the number 2 seed this year in 38 seconds when Iowa wrestled Nebraska. Let's move on to 133. If there's another guy at a weight class that could be considered as big a favorite as Spencer Lee, Shane, it might be Roman Bravo Young at 133.
This guy's won 49 straight, 2-time Big Ten champion, 2-time reigning national champion. What makes him so tough, Rick, I've always said this. He's that shiny red sports car. He can go there, or he can go hardcore, rusted out pickup and do that kind of work. He's sensational.
How about Mendez and Bird? What a battle for second and third if seeds hold.
We're not supposed to have favorites, Rick. I can't help it. Mendez and Bird, two of my favorites. This could be a possible semifinal match. Mendez beat Bird, two-time All-American for the Fighting Illini earlier this season at the Michigan State Open. Chris Cannon's a two-time All-American. Regason was third at the Big Tens last year. Nagao's turned some heads for Minnesota. And by the way, Foley and Lamont, those guys were All-Americans at 125 a couple years back.
Foley's a guy who loves the postseason as well. Now, at 141, the number one national seed has been forever. Cornell's Yanni Diakamahalis. But Real Woods has been unbeaten, and he's been the guy that everybody in the Big Ten has been looking up to.
I've been so impressed with Real Woods. He has fit in perfectly in Iowa City. Came from Stanford, where he was a two-time Pac-12 champion, two-time All-American. He's been so good in the first periods, very good on his feet, and he's got that tilt with that four-point near fall. We've seen it all year. He can put 8, 12 points up like that.
Bo Bartlett and Brock Hardy, two guys who wrestle and wrestle hard.
Yeah, those two guys, both with a conference loss to Real Woods. Bo Bartlett down from 149 pounds. He was behind two-time national champion Nick Lee of Penn State. He's just got that one loss. Brock Hardy's been a lot of fun to watch. Really good in that top position. Tal Shahar's ranked top 10. Berglund was an All-American last year.
Let's reveal 149. No surprise to see a former guest on Big Ten Wrestling and Beyond, Sammy Sassa, who was one of my favorite interviews, by the way, all year long as the number one seed. But a big question there behind him at 2, how healthy is Austin Gomez?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the top stories heading into these Big Ten. Saw Chris Bona, Wisconsin head coach, on Twitter saying he's ready to go. This weight class, 1 through 4, those guys all ranked in the top 6 in the country. Sasso, 3-time All-American, 2 years ago a Big Ten champion. He also was in NCAA Finals that year. Sammy Sasso's just always going to be ready to go.
And Max Mirren, a guy who you see in your bracket and you shake your head and you think to yourself, this is going to be an absolute dogfight because he never quits. Now at 157, Peyton Robb is unbeaten. He's number 1 in the country, but I don't think, Shane, he's as big a favorite as most guys would be at that unbeaten status.
This day and age, Rick, it's always, we're disrespected. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs played that card. Really? I will say this, Peyton Robb, I think he is a little bit disrespected. 2 guys are undefeated for Nebraska, him and Mikey Labriola. We'll talk about him in a bit. First time since 1961, Nebraska's had 2 undefeated regular season wrestlers. Peyton Robb is hard-nosed. He knows his path to victory. He's solid on his feet, but he's a beast in that top position, and he can escape quick.
I'll tell you, I think Kobe Siebrecht as a 5 seed is a really dangerous draw for anybody who has to face the Iowa Hawkeye. Now, at 165, I have no other way to put this. It's the wild, wild west, because to me, you could probably take those top 3 guys, maybe throw in one other that's in the top 6, take them as dice in your hand, roll them, and whatever comes up number 1 is your Big Ten champion.
Yeah, let me try to put this and solve the puzzle. You got Amin, who beat Hamady, who beat Kennedy, who beat Facundo, who beat Amin.
No,
you got that?
That makes no sense. Exactly.
That's 165.
The transitive property does not work. Shane all year long has been calling for maybe 9 weight classes to wrestle, and then at 165, they get their own Big Ten and national championship. That fell on deaf ears. Move on to 174, Carter Starachi, a monster favorite. I don't think he lived up to your preseason prediction, however, that he would not give down a takedown point all year long.
Yeah, I definitely lost that one. Props to Jeff Sermon, our amazing producer. He knows more wrestling than I do, clearly. But Starachi taken down just in a couple of matches, but he's got a winning streak over 40. And with Carter Starachi, Rick, he just thrives and loves being miserable. He's a guy that wants to go 300 feet deep in those deep waters right off the whistle.
To me, this is Starachi, Labriola. I'm just not sure. I love Ethan Smith as a wrestler. I'm just not sure anybody can challenge those top 2 guys.
Yeah, Mikey Labriola, 4-time All-American. He's a junkyard dog. He's wrestled Starachi twice. They wrestled last year at the national tournaments. That was a 6-1 win from Starachi. Earlier than that, a couple years ago, that was at the Big Tens. That was a 3-1 win from Starachi in sudden victory. So Labriola, this guy can scramble. He's tough. If anybody can knock off Starachi, Labriola could be that guy.
If they do battle, it is the all-weight room matchup at 174. Both those guys are totally ripped. To 184, where Starachi's teammate Aaron Brooks is the favorite. I'm not sure there's anybody that's truly going to challenge a guy that has been unbeatable, so fundamentally sound. The technique is so good.
Yeah, he's a guy, Rick, that is shiny red sports car, 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. He might be the most complete wrestler in the Big Ten, three-time Big Ten champion. Of course, last year fell to Miles Amin in that Big Ten final, avenged that loss a couple weeks later to win another national title. Aaron Brooks is so smooth. He is definitely the front runner at the weight class.
As I look to the middle of those seedings, though, I feel like Lenny Pinto is underseeded.
This weight class, Rick, is gallons and gallons of toughness. Isaiah Salazar, I love that story, just one loss. Fine Silver's been really good at Michigan. Aim Assad, Lane Melchesky's a hammer for the Spartans, and you're right, Lenny Pinto as a 7 seed, when you toe the line with Lenny, you better be ready.
You want to talk about hammers? Let's go to 197 because Max Dean is the dictionary definition of a hammer. But Silas Allred may be one of the best stories, not just in the Big Ten. He may be one of the most pleasant surprises in college wrestling nationwide this year.
I would agree 100%. Anytime I see that Max Dean name, Rick, my back gets sore. I just think
about the Jacob Warner bow and arrow.
You can hear the screams to this day. He is so punishing on top. This guy is gritty and tough, and I think his riding ability is going to separate him once again. But Silas Allred, I got to be honest, Rick, a year ago, I didn't know who Silas Allred was, but you're absolutely right on. This guy's been one of the best in the conference, one of the best in the country. He's been fantastic, replacing Eric Schultz, an All-American in Lincoln.
Don't forget about Jacob Warner. I know he hasn't had a great year, but he's a 5 seed. He's probably the only guy in the world who can win a match at a championship-type venue without a takedown, without an aggressive offensive point. He's done it before. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again.
He always shows up. He's a 4-time All-American, 3 times at the Big Ten Championships. He's been 3rd. He's able to find another level in March consistently.
And finally, the heavyweights. Did we save the best for last? You could certainly make that argument because the top 3 guys in the Big Ten are the top 3 guys in the nation. I'm not sure if Davison is still number 4 in the nation, but this is a ridiculously loaded weight class with Mason Parris trying to take home the heavyweight championship in his own building.
All I can do when I look at this, Rick, is just really shake my head. This is amazing talent. Mason Parris, now Gable Stevenson's gone. He's been a 2-time runner-up to Gable Stevenson in the Big Ten Finals. He, of course, was a runner-up at the national tournament behind Stevenson as well. Parris undefeated this season. He was able to beat Kirkley 3-1 in that Michigan-Penn State duel. He's looking good, but you look at this list, Rick. I mean, it's just incredible. I've always said this with these guys. These are not your father's heavyweights from the 80s. These are grown, athletic men.
I want you to make sure, are you hydrated this week? Because you got to keep the fluids going for what you got coming up this weekend.
I can't wait, Rick. The quad box, all these matches here at the Big Ten Championships. And what I love about this tournament, Rick, you know when this tournament gets serious? Opening whistle, it is game on.
Big Ten wrestling and beyond throughout the course of the week. Even more in-depth previews of all those weight classes. Dave?